And the High Inspector of Justice was responsible for assessing and dealing with all complaints related to judges, prosecutor, and some other members of different state institutions, as I mentioned, High Judicial Council, High Prosecutor Council, and so on. And also dealing with investigating disciplinary infringements and initiating disciplinary infringements, which later on then will be discussed, evaluated, and adjudicated by the High Judicial Council or the High Prosecutorial Council when a judge or prosecutor is concerned. So what is important to say, and maybe we need to switch the slide, is that we did create different bodies for two different accountability systems implementation. And why we did that? We did that, of course, to promote accountability, integrity, and transparency, to promote an independent and competent system of justice and free from corruption, which was one of the major issues we had in Albania, to address also improper influence in the justice system, to address long-standing professional, performance and professional standards of actual justice professionals, as well as to foster and maintain public confidence in the justice system. Of course, the fact is that at the moment that we decided to go ahead with this very deep judicial reform, based on all the surveys conducted, but also in the reports, it was identified that the public trust in justice institution, especially in courts, but also in prosecutor offices, was extremely low. So there was no confidence at all, and the perception of corruption was extremely high. So it was decided finally to create a transitory system of evaluation of judges, which we did called re-evaluation of all judges and prosecutors in the system. As I mentioned, because we did create other permanent institutions like High Judicial and High Prosecutorial Council, once judges or prosecutors would pass this first filter, so the vetting, then they would be subjects accountable to these institutions that I mentioned, High Judicial Council and High Prosecutorial Council. At the same time, it is very important to mention that the vetting process was focused on judges, prosecutors, legal advisors, or legal advisors, of course, and some former judges and prosecutors who wanted to enter in the system, but mainly who were in position. For all those who were like candidate judges or prosecutor, another system of accountability was set in place. And the evaluation or the assessment would be done by the permanent bodies, High Judicial Council and High Prosecutorial Council. They would be also responsible for the evaluation of a judge or a prosecutor once they wanted to get promoted inside the system. So that's why I wanted to speak about these two different systems. One dedicated to everybody who would enter for the first time in the system, in the judicial system, and the vetting system, which was dedicated to those who were already in duty. This was also decided to have this vetting system because of the incapacity of the previous, what was called High Council of Justice, to self-clean itself. So we did have an institution dealing with all the matters pertaining before this judicial reform. We did have an institution pertaining and dealing with career of judges and of judges. However, every time that disciplinary proceedings would go through this body, most of the time, the judge in question will not even get disciplinary sanction or not even considered. So the decision was to establish a vetting system and to put in place vetting institutions. So 4 institutions were created, 2 based on a system of like a court system, let's say. So we have the Independent Qualification Commission, and the Independent Qualification Commission was composed of 12 commissioners, and they would function as a court of a first level, first instance, and then would have a special appeal chamber created inside the Constitutional Court, composed of 7 judges, and they would adjudicate in a panel of 5 judges. So the first Independent Qualification Commission, which I will call the IQC for as abbreviation, is the body that would firstly assess if the judge or the prosecutor in question would pass the 3 pillars that were the pillars to be discussed and related to appraisal of assets or verification of assets. These involved a thorough examination of financial assets of judges and prosecutors to ensure that their wealth is consistent with their declared incomes and identify signs of corruption or illicit enrichment. Second, the background check, which this pillar was focused on the integrity and the background of judges and prosecutors. It included checks for any connections to organized crime and to past crime activities or unethical behaviors, and proficiency assessment. Proficiency assessment, as everybody understands, is the evaluation of professional competence, performance of judges, prosecutors. It ensures that they possess the necessary qualifications, skills, that they respect ethical standards and perform their duties efficiently. Based on these, the IQC could impose mainly 3 decisions. 1, to confirm the judge or the prosecution in duty. The second was to remove them from office. And the third, to suspend them and to give the opportunity, if they had deficiency in the professional pillar, let's say, they would have opportunity to and an obligation to attend 1 year of training in the School of Magistrates. We can switch to the other slide. So it is important actually to understand that procedural safeguards were very important to be assured or to be guaranteed. So how they were assured in Albania? Of course, this system of IQC and SAC, or the special appeal chamber, was a system of courts or tribunals. So the first would give the first decision of confirmation of or discharge of duty, and then based on an appeal system, this decision could be appealed in the second institution, which was, as I mentioned, formally attached to the Constitutional Court. And this was foreseen in our Constitution and also in the law, in order for everybody to, and all the subjects involved, to have their procedural rights guaranteed. Additionally, although the decision of the special appeal chamber was final, this decision could still be, it's final at the domestic level, this decision could still be taken to the European Court of Human Rights. So I mentioned that how vetting works, of course, it works under the three pillars I mentioned: evaluation of assets, background check, and proficiency of assessments. Can we switch to the next slide? So what is also important, and I mentioned, but will not focus very much on the proficiency level of the vetting or the evaluation of proficiency, is that the Constitution, but also the law, foresees that it is the High Judicial Council or the High Prosecutorial Council, the body responsible for the periodical or the ordinary evaluation of judges. In Albania, this is done based on the seniority of the judge in that position. Every 3 years or every 5 years, a judge with experience of less than 10 years or of more than 10 years will be evaluated by the High Judicial Council. The role of the High Judicial Council in the vetting process, as also the other institution that I will mention, it was a supportive role, because I mentioned the three pillars. So the IQC, or the Independent Qualification Commission, would decide if a judge or prosecutor would be confirmed in duty if the person would pass these three pillars. So if he had enough knowledge, and if his proficiency report would be let's say positively evaluated, if its assets would be considered reported correctly according to the law, and also if the background checks or the contact with the outside world would be clear, let's say. So the High Judicial Council would serve only as a supportive body, only for the proficiency assessment of judges. So it was the High Judicial Council who would evaluate the performance of a judge during his career. And this will be based on the following elements: judicial capacity, organizational skills, ethics and commitment to judicial values, and professional quality and professional commitment. This report then, positive or negative, based on the evaluation that the High Judicial Council, through a special ad hoc commission established inside the High Judicial Council dedicated to the vetting person, would send the final decision and report to the IQC. Of course, the IQC, the Independent Qualification Commission, had the chance to evaluate by themselves also the report of High Judicial Council, of this special committee inside the High Judicial Council, and make their own assessment, which is also based on complaints of citizens and other tools that they have in their disposal. So let's go to the next vetting, the next slide. Two other pillars that were evaluated by the Independent Qualification Commission was, of course, the asset verification and the background checks. For the asset verification, the body supporting IQC was the High Inspectorate of Declaration of Assets, Declaration and Audit of Assets, and Conflict of Interest, HIDACI. So in Albania, we have a body that is completely independent, and it is a body in which judges and prosecutors, but also high-level officials, submit their declaration of assets on an annual basis. So the role and the function of the High Inspectorate for Declaration of Assets is to control and refer the asset data of these vetting subjects. Declaration of private and asset interests which can be used as evidence for the IQC or for the SAC. So the audit procedure was an audit procedure, of course, based on a document that judges and prosecutors had submitted. So for you to understand the process, it was very simple. Judges and prosecutors had to fill out a declaration on all the assets they had until from 1999 to the day that they had to submit this declaration. So all immovable properties, movable properties. But the tricky question, it was that it was not only for them, it was for their spouse or partner, as well as for minor or grown-up children. However, something that was even more invasive, because this was an obligation that judges and prosecutors were used to, because they had this obligation to report and to declare assets since 2003. What has changed now was the fact that not only they had to declare everything from the beginning, but they also had to declare if they had obtained assets from other people. So, for example, if for acquiring a property that they had borrowed money to a friend, colleague, a member of the family, brother, sister, and so on, they had to declare. And automatically, the person that was involved in this transaction would have become also subject to verification of assets. Of course, the person would become a person to connected to the judge and prosecution in under vetting. As I mentioned, the compliance had for this process had to be in relation to the legislation on vetting, but also on the legislation for declaration of assets and conflict of interest, and also based on the Administrative Procedure Code. I also mentioned that the documents requested was this declaration, but the conformity with this declaration, the High Inspectorate could use the previous declaration that were submitted by the judge or the prosecutor, as well as gather information from all the other bodies. So the report at the end, which was a detailed and reasoned report of the assets and conflict of interest of judge and prosecutor, could have the following findings. The declaration was accurate and in accordance with the law. There is a lack of legitimate financial sources, concealment of assets, false declaration, and conflict of interest. Another thing that was very interesting for the vetting system was that the burden of proof was reversed. So once the judge or the prosecutor would submit a declaration of assets or a declaration, later on we'll see a declaration of background checks, the burden of proof after the preliminary findings will rely with the subject under the vetting. So it was not an obligation of the Independent Qualification Commission or of the other body, the special appeal chamber, but the obligation was of the subject to provide proof that he declared correctly his assets, or that he was not involved in any criminal affairs or connections. So then we can proceed to the background checks. The background check here, it is the National Authority for Classified Information Security, which is the body responsible to receive the declaration from judges and prosecutors. So they will fill out, and this was the background check. And as I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, this was to ensure that judges or prosecutors did not have any connections with criminal groups, mafia, or they had clear judicial records. So in this verification, of course, the subject would submit a declaration. They would undergo a control for inappropriate contacts with persons involving organized crimes, but also the IQC and also the institutions that were responsible to verify, they would also gather information from state secret services, state intelligence services, state financial intelligence services, and also based on if there were some indications that they had made some crimes outside the country, check for court decisions in other jurisdictions. So the period that covered this declaration of background checks was from January 2012 until the day of the declaration. However, the information provided under this pillar was not to be used on criminal proceedings, but only for the vetting process. Of course, there was a presumption in favor of dismissal if they were found inappropriate contacts, and the subject could not prove otherwise. So here we have also this obligation of reversal of proof that I already mentioned. Consequences for not submission of declaration or incorrect declarations were, of course, the dismissal from duty in all the cases. So if the declaration was not submitted on time, the subject would be discharge of duty. The same would be done if the declaration was incorrect. So the whole vetting process was based on a self-declaration of the judge or prosecutor in power, of course, verified by these three bodies that I mentioned, or High Judicial Council or High Prosecutorial Council for the proficiency pillar, then the High Inspectorate for Declaration of Assets, Conflict of Interest, and Conflict of Interest for Asset Declaration, and then the authority, the National Authority for Classified Information Security. Every time a report with all the findings would be sent to the IQC, Independent Qualification Commission. So the Independent Qualification Commission then would send a number of questions to the judge and prosecutor asking for the person to provide additional information. And the final decision would be decided in a public hearing, and the subject under vetting, of course, would have time to provide all the necessary documents to the vetting process. So this is a first, let's say, only short presentation of how the vetting worked. I would like also to mention that beyond these two instances, so the high qualification, the Independent Qualification Committee, and the Appeal College, or the special appeal chamber, there were two other bodies involved. One was the public commissioners. So two public commissioners were involved in the process to file appeal if they did not agree with the decision of confirmation in duty of a judge or prosecutor coming from the IQC. Then we had the international monitoring operation. This body was led by the European Commission. It was composed by international experts selected by the European Commission through different channels of verification. And this international monitoring operation had two purposes. When the vetting institutions were created, they were checking that everybody who would apply in this position had fulfilled the minimum, the criteria to become a commissioner or a judge in these bodies. They would also check that these vetting institutions were working properly. In the second phase, when the process of vetting started, here it is the moment that they were also informed about every decision. They had the opportunity to check all the file of the subjects under vetting and make recommendations either to the public commissioner or to the second instance that I mentioned, the SAC, the Special Appeal Chamber, about the issues that they identified as critical and that this body should have taken into consideration and appeal the decision of IQC. So now we can proceed to the vetting in figures. I just want to give you a flavor of what happened in Albania in the past 7 years. So as I mentioned, we had two independent bodies, the Independent Qualification Commission and the Special Appellate Chamber inside the court. 2 weeks ago, the Independent Qualification Commission terminated its work. They had evaluated 805 subjects within 7 years. Out of which 373 confirmation of duties, or approximately 46 in total. 269 judges, prosecutors, advisors, and so on were discharged of duty, or in total 34%. And they were 163 decisions, or approximately 16 to 17% of decisions of process termination, interruption, and so on. So when the process were terminated, interrupted, or there was no decision, this was based on the fact that the judge or prosecutor decided to resign from the duty, or they were discharged for other reasons, such as a disciplinary proceeding, or from the beginning they had resigned from the duty. Because it was given the opportunity to all judges and prosecutors in power to resign from the duty from the moment that the vetting institution or the legislation in power enter into force. What is interesting, and you can see, because I have somehow made for you statistics on how many judges were confirmed in duty and how many were not confirmed in duty. So you can see 165 judges were confirmed in duty, or approximately 40%. Prosecutors, approximately 48%. They were discharged of duty judges at the level of 36%, and prosecutors at the level of 44%. However, if we add all together how many judges and prosecutors, let's say, found themselves out of the system for one reason or the other, of course, is approximately the range is from 50 to 60%. because we need to take into consideration also these decisions related to the resignation, like 163 decisions that I already mentioned. So it's almost 16%. In terms of a special appellate college or chamber, its mandate it's still ongoing, and it will be finalized in 2026. So far, they have adjudicated 685 cases, which at the level of 89% have confirmed the IQC decision, and only 11% of these decisions have been reversed. So only 11% of the decision of the Independent Qualification Commission have been reversed by the Special Appellate College. And as per today's speaking, 100 cases remain to be adjudicated. Please do not forget that the Independent Qualification Commission, when it was established and created, it was established with a mandate of 5 years. After the termination of the 5 years, it was realized that these bodies couldn't finalize their work, so an extension of 2 years was accorded to them, and that's why in 7 years they managed to finalize the work in relation to conduct the vetting for all judges, prosecutors, some legal advisors, and some former judges and prosecutors who wanted to enter in the system. So now let's go to some more general concerns. So I have very few slides because we will have hopefully the time to discuss if you have any questions about the process. So what are the arguments pro conducting a vetting process, or at least what were the arguments pro in Albania? The idea was to restore public trust. So the vetting process in Albania was decided, or was designed to restore public trust, which, as I mentioned, was at a very low level once the process started, and also to remove from the judiciary the corrupt and incompetent officials, or those who had connection with organized crime and the mafia world, let's say. Another argument, of course, was that of EU integration, and this deep justice reform was requested by the European Union and European Commission to Albania in order for us to have an opportunity to join the European family. So for Albania, it was a crucial step to go through this vetting process, as it was also a recommendation of the European Commission. Combating corruption, of course, it makes sense that by thoroughly investigating the background, but also the assets of judges and prosecutors, the process aimed to reduce corruption and inappropriate connections in the judiciary. Strengthening rule of law, it makes sense because, as Yuketa mentioned also in the beginning, that it is crucial for a democratic society to have a strong judicial system that ensures that all rights of citizens are respected, and every single citizen is considered equal before. Of course, it was crucial for us to have a judiciary which was clean from corruption, from influences, and to overall improve the judicial legal system. In the next slide, I will also expose the arguments against vetting process. So Critics argued that the vetting process can be manipulated for political purposes. And of course, the risk exists, but if you'll go through this process, of course, you need to be careful once in the moment that you create these institutions, and to provide all the guarantees for all the subjects that will be part of this process to find their rights and to have the opportunity to be heard in a trial established by law. That's why one of the things that in Albania it was done, it is the creation of the vetting system inside the constitution. So all the provisions for creating a vetting system were established in the constitution, so there were no chance to challenge it constitutionally. The implementation challenges, of course, they were implementation challenges and administrative ones and delays. And as I mentioned, the IQC mandate was extended for 2 years because, of course, gathering information for all public institutions did take time, and especially in systems where not all the information is digitalized, and where the work it's also need to be done on paper basis. So some information, evidence to be found in the public registers, which were paper-based documents, or in immovable properties registers where some information was not digitalized and so on. It was demanding and required a lot of efforts. Also, the cooperation among institutions was sometimes challenging, because in order for the vetting institution to have to conduct one report of vetting for one subject, either judge or prosecutor, they needed to have all the reports from these 3 different bodies that I mentioned. So depending on the pace, depending on the capacities of all the institutions, sometimes this cooperation did take time. So this is something also to be taken into account in the Georgia's case if you will go ahead for the vetting. So cooperation among supporting bodies, it's crucial. Human rights concern, of course, there were some concerns about the fairness of the vetting process, including potential violation of the right to fair trial. I will show you 3 cases from the European Court of Human Rights where some of these challenges were justified and some not, and we'll have the chance to discuss. The impact of the judiciary. Let me tell that the impact of judiciary, when I mentioned, and I did in person, I did in purpose showed you some statistics in terms to see how many human resources the judicial system in Albania lost. And the impact was significant, and it required that the permanent bodies such as the High Judicial and Prosecutorial Council take additional measures to mitigate this process. So one of the things was that in Albania we did adopt a new judicial map, which we did, which was not it was not only the vetting, the reason for doing so. It was also a reason for increasing the efficiency, but also the fact that we did lose some human resources in the process was an additional motivation. Also, the establishment of some specific measures, such as the delegation of judges in different courts from those who they were appointed, in order to adjudicate cases and to create panels of judges in the courts that were most affected by the vetting process, was also one of the measures that the High Judicial Council took. Another measure that was taken was, of course, the increasing of numbers of the candidate judges and prosecutors in the School of Magistrate. So the School of Magistrate is the only entering point in the Albanian judiciary for someone to become a judge and prosecutor. So every candidate has to go through the School of Magistrate to attend 3 years of formation, let's say, before they would enter in the system. So one of the arguments is, of course, the shortage of a qualified personnel and disrupting the functioning of the judicial system and the creation of backlog in the courts. Now, I would like to mention 3 decisions of the European Court of Human Rights. Why I choose these 3 decisions? Because of their subjects, of course. So we had the Georgia versus Albania. In this, the case was that a judge of the Constitutional Court was discharged from duty. She was discharged from duty because she couldn't prove that she had acquired immovable property with lawful assets. So once the decision was final, she had the chance to challenge this decision in the European Court of Human Rights. What is interesting here is that the European Court of Human Rights here had the opportunity to discuss if the vetting institutions in Albania, so the IQC and SAC, were court established by law. And the reply of the court was positive by saying that they were both court established by law because they were foreseen, established, created in the Constitution by a special law on vetting, but also they were considered independent, impartial. And as all the guarantees in the system were considered that existed there. In the case of Safdari versus Albania, I choose this case because actually the court found the violation of both Article 6 and Article 8 of the Convention. So Article 6, fair trial, but also Article 8, the respect of private life. And it ruled that her dismissal and the lifetime ban from practicing law were disproportionated because the decision was mainly based on the fact that the prosecutor in this case was discharged from duties for a part of the assets of not herself but her husband. So her spouse could not justify that he had paid taxes while he was working abroad for a short-term period of time in, if I'm not mistaken, in Greece and Saudi Arabia. So he couldn't provide proofs that he had paid taxes in these foreign countries while he was working there. And this episode happened before they were married and before the Miss Safdari was even appointed prosecutor. So the court considered, although the matter of tax evasion is a matter of concern, they did consider that the decision to dismiss a prosecutor while she had no issues with her own property and assets for a very small amount of taxes that her spouse could not justify that he had paid was disproportionated done by the vetting institutions. However, the court did not find systemic problems with the vetting process and the vetting institutions in Albania. So the court did not give general measures, but only personal measures related to the prosecutor. The third case is Besnik-Cani versus Albania. Here as well, the court found a violation and ruled that the dismissal and the lifetime ban were disproportionate. But this was very interesting because here the case is the first time that the person did not, the court did not evaluate the case itself, but or the reasons why the person was discharged of duty, but the court focused on the implementation or the non-respect of Article 6.1 of the convention that related to the fact of the court or tribunal established by law. So what is interesting here is that the subject was confirmed in duty by the first instance, so by the IQC. Then the public commissioner challenged it and appealed the decision of IQC. Then the SAC, or the special chamber, dismissed him from duty. However, during the process, Mr. Cani required that one of the judges of his panel to be withdrawn from the decision making, as he stated that he did not fulfill the requirements to be a judge of the court, as he had found information that one of the members of this panel had previously been discharged from duty and had been a part of a process of disciplinary proceedings. This information was not disclosed by the judge. So during the process, it was found that this information was true, and the judge in this panel of the appellate chamber was firstly suspended and then discharged from duty. However, neither the chamber nor the constitutional court agreed, while the vetting process was taking place, to exclude the judge from the panel. So the prosecutor, who was discharged of duty, challenged that in the European Court of Human Rights, which found that there was indeed a violation of the tribunal created by law in this case, because the person or the prosecutor had challenged this question, and no legal remedy was assured in Albania. So at the very end, in both cases, in the case of Savdari and in the case of Cani, the European Court of Human Rights asked Albanian authorities, Albanian state, to reopen proceedings in relation to both cases. And I can state that Ms. Savdari now is back to work after also an internal process, and today she's back to be part of the prosecution office. So this is my presentation. I hope I have somehow explained how the vetting system works, which are the guarantees, what were the issues that Albania faced, and gave some practical and concrete cases from the European Court of Human Rights, and I hope we'll have fruitful discussions.
Thank you so much, Helena. Really, it was very informative and very detailed information about Albanian vetting system. I think that if Georgia and I think that we will come to this point because through this period of reforms, we are like in overcoming some challenges, but still we have a lot of problems, and these problems are staying. And the one way to overcome this problem and to release our judiciary from this influence, it will be very important to conduct vetting. And when we come to this point, I think that we will come back to this presentation and to this video record. I will use this positive and negative side, and I think for experts it will be very useful, because this process and this practical view and assessment, what we have to envisage and what is the threats before we begin and after in the process. I think it will be very interesting and useful. I will have some questions, but I think I will ask you in our discussion after we will over our presentations. And thank you so much again. I will pass the floor to Vakhtang Khmaladze, who will explain us. He is an expert and then one of the author of a draft law about this common courts law. He recommends some amendments to the law, and these amendments also included the how vetting should be implemented in Georgian system. And I think his views and why Georgia came to this process, as why European Commission and Venice Commission, they recommend to implement this reform and especially integrity check. I think that his opinion and presentation and explanation will be very interesting for us. Please, Mr. Vakhtang, the floor is yours, and we're listening all in yours. Ana Vakhtang, თქვენი მიკროფონი რომ ჩართოთ.
მოგესალმებით. მე წარმოგიდგენთ ვეტინგთან დაკავშირებულ ან კანონპროექტის ვეტინგთან დაკავშირებულ ნაწილს. ეს კანონპროექტი მომზადებული რამდენის მიერ და კანონპროექტის ერთ-ერთი ავტორი მეც გახდით. თვითონ კანონპროექტები, ეს იყო რამდენიმე კანონპროექტი, ანუ პაკეტი, რომლებიც ეხებოდა მართლმსაჯულების სისტემის რეფორმას, არა მხოლოდ ვეტინგს, არამედ უფრო ზოგად რეფორმას, თუმცა ამ რეფორმის ძირითადი ელემენტი იყო სწორედ ვეტინგის პროცესის შემოღება. ახლა ეს პროექტი დაახლოებით 1 წლის წინ წარედგინა პარლამენტში. პარლამენტმა არაფერი გაითვალისწინა ამ კანონპროექტიდან. როდესაც ვამზადებდით კანონპროექტს, ჩვენ ვცდილობდით, რომ გვემოქმედა მინიმალური აუცილებლობის პრინციპით, რომ რაც შეიძლება ნაკლები ყოფილიყო აუცილებლობა კონსტიტუციაში ცვლილების შეტანისა. რადგან ჩვენთან კონსტიტუციაში ცვლილების შეტანის პროცესი არის საკმაოდ რთული და მიღწევა ცვლილებისა, თან იმ სახის ცვლილებისა, რომელიც მაშინვე ამოქმედდება, თითქმის შეუძლებლად ჩანს. ამას ვამბობ იმიტომ, რომ მართლმსაჯულების სისტემის რეფორმისთვის, ვთქვათ, საკვანძო საკითხი არის იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭოს რეფორმა. იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭოს რეფორმა კი კონსტიტუციური ცვლილების გარეშე უბრალოდ ვერ განხორციელდება. ანუ ეს დიდი პრობლემა გვქონდა. ამიტომ გარდა ამისა, მოსამართლეთა თანამდებობიდან გადაყენების საკითხი. დღეს კონსტიტუციის თანახმად უზენაესი სასამართლოს მოსამართლის თანამდებობიდან გადაყენება შეიძლება მხოლოდ იმპიჩმენტის წესით. ესეც უკვე პრობლემას ქმნიდა. თუ ამ ნორმას არ შევცვლიდით, მაშინ ვეტინგის საფუძველზე პირველი და მეორე ინსტანციის სასამართლოების მოსამართლეთა თანამდებობიდან ჩამოცილება შესაძლებელი იქნებოდა, მაგრამ უზენაესი სასამართლოს მოსამართლეებს ხელს ვერავინ ახლებდა. მოკლედ, აი ამ მთელი რიგი პრობლემების გათვალისწინებით შევეცადეთ მაინც აი კანონებში ცვლილებების მეშვეობით მიგვეღწია ძირითადი რგოლების გაჯანსაღებისთვის. მხედველობაში მაქვს მე თავად იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭო, პირველი და მეორე ინსტანციის სასამართლოები და პროკურატურის, ასე ვთქვათ, ხელმძღვანელი პირები. რომ ამათი ვეტინგი მაინც გამხდარიყო შესაძლებელი. ახლა რესურსი შეფასებისა. დღეს ჩვენი კანონი ავალდებულებს იუსტიციის უმაღლეს საბჭოს, რომ მოსამართლის თანამდებობაზე გამწესებამდე შეაფასოს მან მოსამართლეობის კანდიდატის საქმიანობა კომპეტენტურობისა და კეთილსინდისიერების კრიტერიუმებით. მაგრამ არანაირი შემოწმება არ ხდება მოქმედი მოსამართლეებისა. ანუ ერთხელ თუ შეფასდა მოსამართლე, ეს არის მოსამართლეობის კანდიდატი როცა არის და მეორედ ჩვენთან მოქმედებდა 3 წლიანი ვადა პირველად მოსამართლეს გამწესებისას, რომლის მერეც უნდა მიიღო გადაწყვეტილება იუსტიციის უმაღლეს საბჭოს უვადოდ მოსამართლეთ გამწესების შესახებ. აი ამ დროსაც კეთდებოდა შეფასება. მეტი შეფასება აღარ ხორციელდებოდა. თავად ის თუ როგორ აკეთებდა იუსტიციის უმაღლეს საბჭო ამ შეფასებებს, ძალიან დიდ კრიტიკას იწვევს და ნდობის ხარისხი იუსტიციის უმაღლეს საბჭოს მიმართ არის უაღრესად დაბალი. დღეს საქართველოში ისეთი გაბატონებული აზრი არის ის, რომ სასამართლოს სისტემას მართავს გარკვეული კლანი, რომ სასამართლოს სისტემაში არის კლანური მმართველობა. ამ კლანურმა მმართველობამ მოახერხა ის, რომ მოსამართლეთა კორპუსის დიდი ნაწილი ექვემდებარება სწორედ ამ კლანს, ამიტომ მოსამართლეთა კონფერენციის მიერ არჩეული იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭოს წევრები ასევე არიან კლანის წარმომადგენლები. და არის შეკრული ჯადოსნური წრე, რომ კლანური იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭო ნიშნავს თავისთვის სასურველ პირებს მოსამართლეებად და შემდგომ ეს მოსამართლეები იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭოს შემადგენლობის განახლებისას ირჩევენ საბჭოს წევრებად ასევე კლანის წევრებს. აი როგორმე ამ ჯადოსნური წრის გარღვევა იყო საჭირო და ამიტომ ჩვენ ვიმართეთ ასეთ ხერხს, რომ შეიქმნას მოსამართლეობის კანდიდატებისა და მოსამართლეთა შეფასებისთვის დროებითი საერთაშორისო ექსპერტთა საბჭო. ჩვენი პროექტის მიხედვით ეს საბჭო 12 წევრისაგან უნდა შედგებოდეს რომელთაგან 9 წევრს ამ 12-ვე წევრს ირჩევს პარლამენტი, ოღონდ წინასწარ არის განსაზღვრული, ვის აქვს კანდიდატების წარდგენის უფლება. 9 წევრის წარდგენის უფლება აქვთ იმ საერთაშორისო ორგანიზაციებსა და საქართველოში მოქმედ დიპლომატიურ წარმომადგენლობებს, რომლებიც ბოლო 2 წლის განმავლობაში მუშაობდნენ მართლმსაჯულების სისტემის რეფორმის ან და კორუფციასთან ბრძოლის საკითხებზე. ცნობილი არის, რომელია ეს საერთაშორისო ორგანიზაციები და დიპლომატიური წარმომადგენლობები. დანარჩენი 3 წევრის წარდგენის უფლება უკვე უნდა ჰქონდეთ საქართველოში მოქმედ არასამთავრობო ორგანიზაციებს, რომლებსაც ასევე აქვთ გამოცდილება სწორედ ამ ორ სფეროში მართლმსაჯულების სისტემის რეფორმისა და კორუფციასთან ბრძოლის საკითხებზე. ამ კანდიდატებისაგან უნდა აირჩიოს პარლამენტმა 12 წევრი. მას უნდა ჰქონდეს დამოუკიდებელი დაფინანსება, საბიუჯეტო დაფინანსება, მას უნდა ჰქონდეს საშუალება შექმნას თავისი სამდივნო, რომელიც დაეხმარება ექსპერტთა საბჭოს თავის საქმიანობაში და ექსპერტთა საბჭოს ვალდებულება იქნება შეაფასოს მოსამართლეობის ყველა კანდიდატი. მოსამართლეობის კანდიდატი უნდა შეაფასოს ექსპერტთა საბჭოს 12-ვე წევრმა 1/2-ისაგან დამოუკიდებლად. და შემდგომ უკვე ამ 12 წევრის მიერ 1/2-ისაგან დამოუკიდებლად მიღებული შეფასებების საფუძველზე უნდა განისაზღვროს დადებითი შეფასება მიიღო თუ არა კანდიდატმა, კომპეტენტურობის კრიტერიუმის მიხედვით ცალკე და კეთილსინდისიერების კრიტერიუმის მიხედვით ცალკე. ასევე ამ საბჭოს ვალდებულება იქნება მოქმედ მოსამართლეთა შეფასება 5 წელიწადში ერთხელ. ოღონდ თავდაპირველად ამ საბჭომ მისი შექმნისთანავე უნდა დაიწყოს მოქმედი მოსამართლეების შეფასება. ჩვენი პროექტის მიხედვით განსაზღვრული იყო ვადები ამ შეფასებისა, რადგან შესაფასებელი არის პირველ რიგში შესაფასებელი არის იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭოს წევრები, უზენაესის სასამართლოს სადისციპლინო და საკვალიფიკაციო კომისიების წევრები, კოლეგიების წევრები. ეს ორი კოლეგია, საკვალიფიკაციო და სადისციპლინო, არის ის კოლეგიები, რომლებშიც შეიძლება საერთაშორისო ექსპერტთა საბჭოს და იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭოს გადაწყვეტილებების გასაჩივრება. ამიტომ პირველ რიგში უნდა მოხდეს მათი ვეტინგი. ამის შემდეგ უნდა გაიმართოს პირველი და მეორე ინსტანციის სასამართლოების კოლეგიების ხელმძღვანელებისა და უზენაესის სასამართლოს წევრების საქმიანობის ვეტინგი და შემდეგ უკვე ყველა სხვა დანარჩენი მოსამართლის ვეტინგი. აქვე ჩვენი პროექტის მიხედვით განსაზღვრულია, რომ ამ ექსპერტთა საბჭომ უნდა განახორციელოს პროკურატურის ხელმძღვანელი პირების ვეტინგი და ასევე ანტიკორუფციული ბიუროს ხელმძღვანელი პირების ვეტინგი. ანტიკორუფციული ბიურო ერთ-ერთი მნიშვნელოვანი რგოლია ზოგადად ყველა ვეტინგის პროცესში, ვინაიდან მას ევალება ჩვენთან მოქმედი კანონმდებლობით თანამდებობის პირთა ქონებრივი მდგომარეობის დეკლარაციების პერიოდული შემოწმება. ამიტომ მნიშვნელოვანია, რომ ეს ბიურო იყოს სანდო, რადგან მის მიერ დეკლარაციების შემოწმების შედეგები გადაეცემა სწორედ საექსპერტო საბჭოს შესაფასებლად, შემდგომ კანდიდატების თუ მოსამართლეების შესაფასებლად, რასაკვირველი ექსპერტთა საბჭოს თავად აქვს უფლება თავად მოიძიოს ნებისმიერი მისთვის საინტერესო ინფორმაცია. მთელი ამ ვეტინგის პროცესში მე ყურადღებას შევაჩერებ კეთილსინდისიერების კრიტერიუმით შეფასებაზე, რადგან კომპეტენტურობის კრიტერიუმით შეფასების თვითონ კომპონენტები, რაც ფასდება, დღესაც საკმაოდ კარგად არის განსაზღვრული მოქმედი კანონმდებლობით, ერთადერთი რაც არის საჭირო, რომ შემფასებლებმა კეთილსინდისიერად გამოიყენონ ეს კრიტერიუმები და დადონ სწორი შეფასებები. ხოლო რაც შეეხება შეფასებას კეთილსინდისიერების კრიტერიუმით, ეს კანონით არის განსაზღვრული, მოქმედი კანონით, რომ ამ კრიტერიუმით შეფასდება პიროვნული კეთილსინდისიერება და პროფესიული სინდისი, დამოუკიდებლობა, მიუკერძოებლობა და სამართლიანობა, პიროვნული და პროფესიული ქცევა, პიროვნული და პროფესიული რეპუტაცია და ფინანსური ვალდებულებების შესრულება. აი სწორედ ამ ფინანსური ვალდებულებების შესრულებაში შევიტანეთ ჩვენ დამატებითი ელემენტები და კანონპროექტით განისაზღვრა, რომ მისი შეფასებისას, მის შესაფასებლად ანტიკორუფციულმა ბიურომ ყველა მოქმედი მოსამართლის ქონებრივი მდგომარეობის დეკლარაცია უნდა შეამოწმოს 2 წელიწადში ერთხელ. ასევე ამ ბიურომ დაუყოვნებლივ უნდა შეამოწმოს მოსამართლეობის კანდიდატთა დეკლარაციები. ხოლო ამ დეკლარაციაში შესატან ინფორმაციას არსებული რაც არის, იმას დაემატა დეკლარანტის ოჯახის შემოსავლებისა და ხარჯების ბოლო კალენდარული წლის ბალანსი. ეს არის მნიშვნელოვანი ელემენტი, რადგან ეს საშუალებას მოგცემს, ასე ვთქვათ, რიცხობრივად, ბუღალტრულად შემოწმდეს თანაფარდობა ხარჯებისა და შემოსავლისა და კანონიერება შესაბამისად ამ შემოსავლების. რაც შეეხება თავად ქონებრივი მდგომარეობის დეკლარაციას, დღეს მოქმედი კანონმდებლობით კანონი ავალდებულებს დეკლარანტს დეკლარაციაში მიუთითოს არა მხოლოდ თავისი ოჯახის წევრების შემოსავლები და ხარჯები, არამედ დეკლარანტის და მისი მეუღლის მშობლების, დეკლარანტისა და მისი მეუღლის ცალკე მცხოვრები შვილების, დაძმების ქონებრივი მდგომარეობაც. ასევე თუ დეკლარანტის შემოსავლებში არის საჩუქრად მიღებული უძრავი ქონება ან და თანხები სხვა პირთაგან, მაშინ უნდა შემოწმდეს ამ პირთა ქონებრივი მდგომარეობის დეკლარაციებიც. ამ ვალდებულებასთან ერთად შემდგომ გაფართოვდა მოსამართლის უფლებამოსილების ვადამდე შეწყვეტის საფუძვლები. ხო, მანამდე ვიტყვი იმას, რომ თუ მოსამართლეობის კანდიდატის შეფასება ან კომპეტენტურობის კრიტერიუმით, ან კეთილსინდისიერების კრიტერიუმით იქნა უარყოფითი, ის ვერ განწესდება მოსამართლედ. უკაცრავად ერთი წუთით კომპიუტერს შევაერთებ, თორემ დამიჯდა. ანუ უარყოფითი შეფასების შემთხვევაში მოსამართლეობის კანდიდატი ვეღარ გამწესდება მოსამართლედ. ხოლო თუ ორივე კრიტერიუმით დადებითი იქნა შეფასება, მაშინ ეს გადაეცემა იუსტიციის უმაღლეს საბჭოს, რომელმაც უკვე კანონით დადგენილი წესით კენჭი უნდა უყაროს მათ მოსამართლედ გამწესებას. რაც შეეხება მოქმედ მოსამართლეებს. თუ მოქმედი მოსამართლის საქმიანობა კომპეტენტურობის კრიტერიუმის მიხედვით უარყოფითად შეფასდა, მაშინ იუსტიციის უმაღლეს საბჭოს აქვს უფლება არ შეუწყვიტ, მას შეუჩეროს მოსამართლის უფლებამოსილება და დაავალოს 1 წლის განმავლობაში კვალიფიკაციის ამაღლება. რის შემდეგაც ის დაუბრუნდება მოსამართლის მოვალეობის შესრულებას, ოღონდ კვლავ მოხდება შემდგომ მისი საქმიანობის შეფასება და თუ განმეორებითაც უარყოფითი შეფასება მიიღო კომპეტენტურობის კრიტერიუმით, მაშინ მას შეუწყდება მოსამართლის უფლება. რაც შეეხება კეთილსინდისიერების კრიტერიუმს, აქ უფრო მკაცრი მიდგომაა და აღნიშნულია, რომ თუ მოქმედი მოსამართლის საქმიანობა კეთილსინდისიერების კრიტერიუმის მიხედვით უარყოფითად შეფასდა, მას უნდა შეუწყდეს მოსამართლის უფლებამოსილება. და უფლებამოსილების ვადამდე შეწყვეტის საფუძვლებს დაემატა გარდა კეთილსინდისიერების კრიტერიუმით უარყოფითი შეფასებისა დაუსამუთებელი ქონების ფლობა, და აქაც ისევე როგორც ალბანეთში იყო მტკიცების ტვირთი ქონების დასამუთებულობის შესახებ თავად მოსამართლეს აკისრია. შემდეგ როდესაც ვამბობდი იმას, რომ წლის მოსამართლის დეკლარაციაში უნდა წარადგინოს ბოლო წლის ფინანსური შემოსავლები და ხარჯები, აი ამ ბალანსის დარღვევის შემთხვევა, თუ არ არის შემოსავლებსა და ხარჯებს შორის ბალანსი, შემდეგ მოსამართლის გადაწყვეტილება ან და მოქმედება, რომლის თაობაზეც ადამიანის უფლებათა ევროპულმა სასამართლომ დაადგინა, რომ ეს გადაწყვეტილება ან და მოქმედება ეწინააღმდეგება ადამიანის უფლებათა ევროპულ კონვენციას. ჩვენ არაერთი შემთხვევა გქონდა საქართველოში და სამწუხაროდ დღესაც ხდება მსგავსი რამ, როდესაც სასამართლოს გადაწყვეტილებებს სწორედ ამ ნიშნით სტრასბურგის სასამართლო ადგენს ევროპული კონვენციის დარღვევას. და ერთ-ერთ საფუძვლად მოსამართლის ჩამოცინებისა თანამდებობიდან ეს კრიტერიუმიც მივუთითეთ. მსგავსი კრიტერიუმები არის იუსტიციის უმაღლეს საბჭოს წევრების უფლებამოსილების ვადამდე შეწყვეტისთვის, ისევე როგორც პროკურატურის პროკურორთა ვეტინგის შემთხვევაში და კიდევ ერთ რამეს დავამატებ, რომ დღეს მოქმედი მექანიზმით იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭო ირჩევს სასამართლო ინსპექტორს, რომელსაც ევალება მოსამართლეთა მოქმედების გასაჩივრების შემთხვევაში მოსამართლის მოქმედების და გადაწყვეტილებების კანონიერების შემოწმება. ჩვენი პროექტის მიხედვით ეს ინსპექტორი ამ ინსპექტორს უნდა ირჩევდეს არა იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭო, არამედ ეს გარეთ უნდა იქნეს გამოტანილი. ინსპექტორი მაღალი კვორუმით უნდა აირჩიოს პარლამენტმა და განსხვავებით დღევანდელი წესისაგან მოსამართლეთა მიმართ დისციპლინური პასუხისმგებლობის დაკისრების თაობაზე გადაწყვეტილებას დღეს იღებს ინსპექტორი, ოღონდ ეს გადაწყვეტილება მიდის იუსტიციის უმაღლეს საბჭოში და შემდგომ იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭო წვეთს მიმართოს თუ არა სადისციპლინო კოლეგიას. ჩვენი პროექტის მიხედვით ეს შუარგოლი იუსტიციის უმაღლესი საბჭო აღარ იქნება და ინსპექტორს, სასამართლო ინსპექტორს შესაძლებლობა ექნება პირდაპირ მიმართოს სადისციპლინო კოლეგიას, რომელიც მიიღებს მოსამართლისთვის დისციპლინური პასუხისმგებლობის დაკისრების გადაწყვეტილებას, მათ შორის მოსამართლის უფლებაოსილების ვადამდე შეწყვეტის გადაწყვეტილებას. ოღონდ ყველა ეს გადაწყვეტილება შესაძლებელი იქნება გასაჩივრდეს უზენაესის სასამართლოს სადისციპლინო ან საკვალიფიკაციო კოლეგიაში, გააჩნია მან დრაზე იქნება საუბარი კომპეტენციებზე თუ სხვაგვარ დისციპლინურ დარღვევაზე, ოღონდ წინასწარ ამ ორი კოლეგიის ყველა წევრი და დღეს ამ კოლეგიებში არის 5 უზენაეს სასამართლოს მოსამართლე. პირველ რიგში სწორედ მათი საქმიანობის ვეტინგი უნდა განხორციელდეს. მე ვერ ხედავ ამ პროექტის და ზოგადად ვეტინგის პროცესის დაწყების ვერანაირ შესაძლებლობას დღევანდელი ხელისუფლების პირობებში, მით უფრო ახლა, როდესაც თავად ამ ხელისუფლების ლეგიტიმურობის საკითხია ძალიან დიდი კითხვის ნიშნის ქვეშ. ვნახოთ, როგორ წარიმართება პროცესები და თუ მიაღწია საზოგადოება ახალი არჩევნების დანიშვნას, პარლამენტის ახალი არჩევნების დანიშვნას, მე შეიძლება ვიქონიოთ იმედი, რომ განხორციელდეს ზოგადად მართლმსაჯულების სისტემის რეფორმა, რომელმაც უნდა მოიცვას არა მხოლოდ სასამართლოები, არამედ ასევე პროკურატურაც, ანტიკორუფციული ბიუროც და ყველა ის სტრუქტურა, ყველა ის ელემენტი, რომლებიც შედის მართლმსაჯულების სისტემაში. მადლობა ყურადღებისთვის.
დიდი მადლობა ბატონო ვახტანგ, მართლაც ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანია აღნიშნული კანონპროექტის არსებობა, ვინაიდან მას შემდეგ, რაც ვენეციის კომისიამაც და ევროკომისიამაც გასცა აღნიშნული რეკომენდაცია, მიუხედავად იმისა, რომ არასამთავრობო სექტორი თუ პროფესიული წრეების წარმომადგენლები, ასე ვთქვათ, შეთანხმებული იყვნენ, რომ ვეტინგის აუცილებლობა იყო მნიშვნელოვანი, ასეთი სრულფასოვანი, დეტალური, წერილობითი დოკუმენტი არ შექმნილა, რომელშიც პირდაპირ იქნებოდა შემოთავაზებული ვერსიები თუ როგორ უნდა განხორციელდეს ეს პროცესი და კონკრეტული ნაბიჯები რა უნდა განხორციელებულიყო და ვფიქრობ, რომ ეს რომ არსებობს, მიუხედავად იმისა, რომ დღეს არ ვართ იმ პირობებში, რომ ვეტინგის თემა იყოს პრიორიტეტული, უბრალოდ არ არსებობს პოლიტიკური ნება ამ პროცესისა, მაინც ის რომ ჩვენ ასე ვთქვათ, შემზადებული ვიქნებით, გვექნება სხვადასხვა ქვეყნების გამოცდილება, იმიტომ რომ არაერთი წელი ჭირდება ამ პროცესის ასე ვთქვათ, მიმდინარეობას, როგორც ვნახეთ, ალბანეთში ფაქტიურად 7 წელია ეს პროცესი მიმდინარეობს და ამ პროცესიდან ჩვენ შეგვიძლია დიდი გამოცდილება და მაგალითები ავიღოთ თუ ჩვენ რა შეიძლება გავითვალისწინოთ, ნეგატიური რა შეიძლება იყოს, დადებითი რა შეიძლება იყოს, თავარი ის არის, რომ თანხდებით სასამართლო რეფორმის სრულფასოვან აუცილებლობაზე, სხვა მხრივ კიდევ ერთხელ ამ არჩევნებზე, ამ პროცესებზე, როცა დაკავებულები არიან და სასამართლო ასე ვთქვათ, უფრო კარგად გამოჩნდა, როგორი დახურულია, როგორ მიკერძო
უკან მოდი ვთქვათ რა, ტრაფარეტული გადაწყვეტილებები.
დიახ, ესე პირდაპირ.
ჯერ წინა პერიოდში, როდესაც მაგალითად ის ამომრჩეველთათვის უცხოეთში საარჩევნო უბნების გახსნაზე, როდესაც იყო დავები, მე წინ მიდევს პირდაპირ სხვადასხვა მოსამართლეთა გადაწყვეტილება ამ საკითხებზე, რომლებიც უპებივით გავს ერთმანეთს. და ამ პირდა ეხლა დღევანდელი ის ხომ სრულიად ცხადია, რომ მან მოქმედებს ერთიანი
უყურებთ, როგორ ხდება ასეთი ერთგვაროვანი პროცესების წარმართვა. ფაქტიურად მხოლოდ ერთი მხარის მოსმენა და დაზარალებულებს არც აქვს შესაძლებლობა, რომ ბოლომდე თავისი მიუხედავად იმისა, რომ აშკარა მათი დაზიანება თუ სხვა ესეთი დამადასტურებელი საბუთები და დოკუმენტები, რომ იყო რაღაც გადაცილება თუ სხვა პრობლემები, მათ საშუალებაც კი არ ეძლებათ, რომ ბოლომდე დაამტკიცონ საკუთარი სიმართლე და ამ ვითარებაში სასამართლოს თემა კიდევ უფრო მნიშვნელობას იძენს, კიდევ უფრო დაგვანახა, რომ დამოუკიდებელი სასამართლოს გარეშე ფაქტიურად შეუძლებელია, რომ ქვეყანაში იყოს დემოკრატიული განვითარება, ასე რომ მადლობა ამისთვის, იმ დეტალური განხილვისთვის, რაც კანონპროექტზე გვესაუბრებთ. მე გადავალ ქალბატონ მანიოლასთან, მოსამართლესთან ალბანეთიდან, რომელიც ახლა შემოგვიერთდა. Maniola, please, I think that you are here. I see you. Can you join us?
Yes. Hi.
Hello. Thank you so
Nice
much
to see you.
for joining us and finding time. I know that you're busy schedule. You are I catched Manuela from this decision room. She was just making some decision from the court, but she has really very good experience about this vetting process in Albania. And Miss Helena, she explained how the process was ongoing through the in Albanian system, and it was really interesting and comprehensive. And we will also hear your experience, your opinion. It was why it was recommended Albania to conduct vetting, how long it was, and what was negative, was positive sides of it, and I will just give a floor to you, and we will listen your assessment about this process. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. So my experience is like before the vetting, during the vetting, and after the vetting. So I'll be focused on these three phases, let's say, 3 stages. Before the vetting, the need was because the public opinion about the perception of the corruption in the judiciary was really high. So there were some polls, and they were saying that 90% of the population people were thinking that the judiciary was corrupted. And even among the judges, when it was done a poll between the judges, they were saying that 60% of their peers were corrupted. And this was really shocking for us. So due to this, all this happened. So the parliament started this reform, and then part of the reform, it was the vetting, so the check of the judges for their assets, the professional tests, abilities, and background checks. So the links with organized crime and criminals and etc. So these are 3 pillars of the vetting. It was not only the vetting, but it was a huge reform, judicial reform going on in Albania. So we changed the High Judicial Council, which is the body that governs the judiciary, and then we established a new body for the prosecution, so parallel body for the prosecution office also, for the prosecutors. And then we recomposed these bodies and their competencies, and we had a high inspectorate to check the judges and the prosecutors and even the councils themselves about disciplinary misconducts and disciplinary measures towards these bodies. And the Supreme Court was part of the judiciary in the sense of checking the judges of the Supreme Court, because before that they were not checked by the council and then by this high inspector. So we changed almost everything, the structure of the judiciary. So the vetting was part of that. And during the vetting, it was a bit stressful for the court system, because judges were kicked out. The outcome of the vetting is that 60% of the judges and prosecutors are out of the system. So only 40% were left. And then you can imagine, so the judges that were left have to cover the whole work. So you have to think about the new judges that you introduce in the system. We did the same, but still there were delays in the process, because there were delays on establishing the governing bodies for the judicial and prosecutor office, and they started the work later. And then the exams at the magistrate school, and then the appointment system took a bit of time. So we still are lack of judges. So we ended up having a lot of work in the court. And then, of course, the delays, the people are not happy. The public is not happy for that. But the positive is that a lot of corrupted people are out of the system. So there are pros and cons when it comes to that. And then we know the people that are corrupted are out of the system. So a lot of judges are happy with this outcome at the same time, the people that are working in the system. But at the same time, with the new judges, I'm talking about the judges because I'm a judge myself, but it's the same thing with the prosecution office also, the prosecutors that are coming out of the magistrate school also. The new comers, they are really new, so they need help to get to start. And then, of course, we, the old ones, we are really busy, so we can't help them properly. So you have to think about that also. So in order that they should have the time to get to know the system, to get to know the practice, and to give the decisions with as much as possible in compliance with the practice. So the School of Magistrates for 2 years, I don't think it's enough to prepare them for that. And then when you have 60% of the judges as the newcomers, then it's a bit of risk that might influence the outcome of the decision making of the judges and how the justice should be done. But these are like risks that you should take. And of course, it's really stressful, and you have to think about the well-being of the judges in the system also. So you have to prepare yourself to help the judges that are in the system in order to have sufficient administrative staff. If you don't have judges enough, but you should support the judges that are in the system with administrative staff. It's something that we are lacking in Albania. We're not prepared for that. In the court, judges were left alone without sufficient staff, secretaries or administrative staff, in order to cover their overload, their work, which was, they were overloaded. So you have to think about that also. Now things are getting better because it's like 6 years now, and we have new judges and some new administrative staff that have been recruited, but still the situation is a bit still chaotic, because we don't have, for instance, chairperson of the course still. All the courts in Albania, they don't have chairpersons. We have like vice president of course that we elect as judges, but the council didn't elect it like chairperson in the courts due to delays and everything, and the regulation and laws, many reasons, but that somehow influenced the work in the courts. So, so this is after. And then during the vetting, of course, it was a bit stressful in the court, because you could see the judges that were working and going through the vetting, they were not so focused in the work, because they had to go through the vetting, and it's a lot of work to be done, a lot of documentation to support your application to the vetting bodies, and in itself the process is not easy. So all this influenced the work at the court. So this is during the vetting. So this is my main concern. So parallel to that, you have to prepare for the new people that will come in the system, and to support the judges that are in the court, that they pass the vetting and then they want to give their own contribution to the system, then continue with that. But without the support of administrative staff, then it's really, really stressful. That is the outcome. And of course, the delays for the people at the end that want to have the service from the court system. But if you ask me, I'm in favor of that. I passed it, and I think it's, so far I don't see another way to kick out the corrupted people in the system. And the very positive thing out of the vetting is this PAC prosecution office and the special anti-corruption and organized crime court that we have. These are two bodies, part of the judiciary and the prosecutorial system in Albania, that now people are very in favor of them. So they have like very high reputation in the public, and they start investigating people that we never thought that might have been close to the court system or to the prosecutor office. So politicians and businesses and mafia and organized crime, and the link between all these groups together. Now we see in the media that these things are out, and then there are prosecutors, they are investigating those crimes, and then now things cases are in the court. So this is the best of all this, I think.
Thank you so much, Manuela. It's really very interesting, and for us, it's really example for the future, how we can conduct this process in the way that don't have some this negative sides, what you have experienced. And yes, it was my question, which you answered in the end, that without vetting, it would be possible to release the judiciary from this corruption. It was the way, or it was the only one chance to achieve the goal. I will also leave this floor to our audience if they have any other questions. We have really long discussion today in the end of year, before the holidays, but we have really very interesting and very relevant topics. Yes, this is my question, if there were any other ways to achieve this goal, to release judiciary from corrupted judges, and also what happened to the judges which were found in violation after process?
I think when the corruption is so widespread, the vetting is one way. So one of the way that in our country we choose that, but to have that, you have the support of the parliament, because it needs like the changes of the constitutions, at least in Albania. So there were all the members of the parliament that decided to have this reform through the changing of the constitution and then enacting the laws and everything. So it was, I think, this full-fledged vetting system, I think it's unique from Albania. I think it's really, now that going back, nobody thought that this will be the effect, that 60% of the judges and prosecutors will be out of the system. So it's really big deal. So if I suggest that depends on the countries, if you have the will to do that. But I think it's a huge thing that we have done. So if you go back, then it's like really, really rare thing. And then this should happen once in the lifetime of a country, and then it shouldn't be a missing opportunity. So if you go for that, you should be very successful. Otherwise, you ruin the system and you ruin all these values of the justice system, immovability of the judges, independence and security and all this stuff. So, but so far in Albania has been, as I said, for me, has been successful because we have these two institutions that are really important and they are having a lot of success and a lot of good results. And about the rest of the judiciary, we have to see because we have new judges and the test of the vetting is in the coming years. But of course, having out of the system 60% of the judges, of course, might be some cases that it's not fair, but like the majority of the cases, of course, they pass through the whole system of the appeal chamber also. So it's quite a big number. And these judges and prosecutors now, they are lawyers, most of them. They are practicing. Some of them had a case at the anti-corruption court and against the organized crime court and SPAC prosecution. Some have been convicted on the first instance and now they are at the appeal, but very few. But the majority of them are lawyers and they are practicing. This is an issue, but that depends on the association of the lawyers. If they will find that in accordance with their ethic rules and the law, doesn't depend on us anymore, on the judiciary. So they are practicing, most of them.
Okay, so they are continuing their work.
They are continuing as lawyers.
Yeah.
Out of the court, but as lawyers, yes.
But they have reputation in society because...
Yeah, of course. The vetting was really public. So every hearing was online, reported in the media, and people could have the chance to see everything and to know those people. But then if they are successful as lawyers or not, if they have a lot of clients or not, that I don't know. But I see some of them in the court, of course.
Okay, thank you so much. It was really
welcome.
Very interesting. I will pass audience if they have any questions about our topic.
I have one question to Maniola. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for amazing introductions to the topic, especially prior to really very close to the new year. Dear Maniola, since you are a judge, maybe you are more informed about this. If the Albanian judiciary system had issues with people appealing after the judges were dismissed through vetting, asking reopening the cases which those judges had decided beforehand, if the system had that kind of issues and if that was widespread?
No, we don't have that issue. We don't have no cases, even one. So we don't face that reopening because our laws precisely provide what are the cases. So it's in the law. What are the cause for reopening the case? And if a judge is corrupted or something similar like that might happen, even before a judge might have been corrupted and some criminal investigation started and been arrested and getting out of the system. These cases happened before also, but that was not a cause to open a case. Only if a particular case is involved, but not in general because the judge was corrupted and then people could ask their cases to be reopened. So no, those kind of issues here.
No, only if I guess, if I may complement what Maniola is saying, only if you have a conflict of interest cases and the judge didn't withdraw from it, but it is a very specific case. So we didn't have issues with judges that were dismissed from the vetting, and then the person claiming something would object to that decision. Also bear in mind that the vetting process was an administrative nature, so was related to the judge itself and not necessarily would affect the performance of a judge and the decisions that were given before.
Thank you. And I had one really short question, and maybe after everybody else asks, I will also ask a couple questions regarding procedure. What kind of corruption are we talking about? Is this high-level elite corruption, or even at the lower levels, like petty corruption? And what was the type of corruption exactly?
Dear Manuela, please turn on the
mic. You're muted.
Sorry. So the vetting in itself is not like it's a case of an instance of the corruption, and then they go to the judge. The issue is that when it comes to the asset declaration, you have to prove that you had enough money. Let's say I make it simple, that enough money that you earn enough money to justify the property that you have. So the asset that you have. If you don't prove that, there is a presumption that you don't justify, and then the money comes from corruption, from influences, or from illegal money, from some not justifying sources. And that is enough for a judge to be dismissed, to make it simple. So it's not that they say that this is corruption due to these or these instances. That is the difference between like
sorry, what I'm asking is
and the disciplinary
why was there the perception of corruption? Why people thought that
because if you have more wealth than you can afford it, of course it comes from out of the corruption.
So there were reports about yeah.
So if you have more assets than you can have due to your income, then those money comes from. So you have to prove that you have enough money to justify the wealth that you have, the assets that you have, the properties that you have. If you don't have that, then you are out, and it's a disciplinary procedure. It's not a criminal procedure.
So if I understood,
so that's how it is.
Also to complement, if I understood correctly, you're asking what type of corruption we thought it existed in the system to go to the vetting process.
Before the vetting started, yes.
So actually, as Manuela said, there were a lot of polls and like surveys conducted that justified the vetting. And we had, maybe you have heard about the perception of corruption, but also the victimization. So we had cases of people who would say that, oh, I gave that amount of money to the judge to adjudicate my case. So, or I gave him or her a gift without having names, because if you have names, then you open a criminal proceedings. But then this made some situation that it was perceived like everywhere, like in order for you to solve your case in the court, you need to pay. So you need to bribe a judge or a prosecutor that your case go through, or it goes in that or that direction. And if I remember correctly, and maybe Manuela will correct me, in the analysis, we were also talking about figures, like for this type of case, you would pay like 5,000 euros. For that type of case, you would pay. So it became somehow, maybe it was not real, but somehow it became a perception that it's what's going on in the system. And maybe the victimization was not as high as the perception. So not everybody was giving bribes to the court or to, we're talking for the court because we both come from more the judicial system. But it was the perception that in order for you to have a court decision in your favor, you needed to give something. And this affected, the image and the credibility of the system. So, and I think they were also one or two cases which became a little bit media sensitive, and they were some disciplinary proceedings inside the previous what is called today is called the High Judicial Council, but the previous institution was called the High Council of Justice, of some judges that had received gifts from businessmen, and they were not sanctioned with any disciplinary proceedings. So this type of affairs somehow, let's say, really affected the image of the system and of this profession. So maybe Magnola will.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. It was not only bribing the judges or the prosecutors with money, but it was even political influence. So a lot of we were suffering a lot due to the influence of the politicians, of the political party in the system. That's why we had a huge judicial reform to make the even the governing bodies independent to the parliament and to the political bodies. So it was not only that, but it was a combination of all kind of influences to the judicial system.
Political
influence,
the businessmen, over outcome of the cases. You mean?
So let's explain. For example, the previous High Justice Council was composed by having members inside. They were like 15 members, if I'm not mistaken. Involving the President of the Republic, the Minister of Justice, the President of the High Court, and then 9 judges. So 2 or 3 representatives of the Parliament, and then the rest were judges of the different levels of the courts. So by having the Minister of Justice inside the council, but also the President, it was considered that somehow the institution itself, it was politicized, and especially because the Minister of Justice had the power to initiate disciplinary proceedings against judges. So now with the new judicial council that we established, the composition is completely different. So we have 11 members, 2 coming from academia, 2 coming from the Bar Association, 1 from civil society, and 6 other members are judges. So now we have no more President of the Republic inside of the council. We have no more Minister of Justice. So we try to depoliticize the bodies which are governing the judiciary. Mm-hmm. The same was done, as Magnola explained, with the High Prosecutorial Council. Also what happened is that the members of the High Court are no longer appointed or elected through a process going through the Parliament and approval of the President of the Republic. Now all the applications go through the High Judicial Council, and the process, and they are appointed by the President of the Republic, but it is only a courtesy or honorific power. So all this is to explain that what also Magnola said, that, and I also said in the beginning, that the justice reform was not only the vetting. It is true that the judges and prosecutors who were in the system had undergone the vetting, but we also in Albania, what happened is that after this reform, or with the new reform, the salaries of judges were increased twice or almost 3 times of what they were. So now a judge of the first instance gains even more than the president of the republic. So the process was very intrusive, very invasive, was probably very stressful for judges and prosecutors, but also the outcome and the rewards, in a way, were there.
Yeah, that is important point to make.
Or...
Yes, that is very important point to make. Thank you so much. Yeah. It must be very important for judges to in this process, because
thank you so much. I think we have to.
Yeah, sorry.
Eka, if you have any questions.
I will wait for others.
Because
yes, really. Yes, if anyone also has some other questions. I have only one, just as this process was too long, it's very interesting. Did regular citizens have access to justice in this process, and how long this case delays was the problem, and how long was this case delays of this regular citizens?
So you mean how this process influences the delay of the cases in the courts?
Yeah, because
we deal the cases, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so if in our law, I'm talking about civil cases. In our law, we have let's say a time limit to finish the cases, which is the maximum 2 years. To consider that it's that the case is dealt within a reasonable time, let's say, in accordance with Article 6 of the European Convention. Now, a case at the first instance can take like 3 to 4 years. I'm talking about like an average. At the appeal level, takes much longer, and at the Supreme Court even longer. So the delays are let's say, a problem that we have to handle now. So the system now is focused on that, how to proceed with the cases, because the vetting now finished, the first instance finished. So this is the challenge of Albania now, to speed up with the cases. So the people are suffering that. This is the reality, and we have to accept that, and we are facing it, and now we are trying to improve that. Okay. That is the challenge now.
Yes, this is the result of this.
Yeah, that is the result, but that's why this is a lesson learned from Albania. Yeah. So you have to think how many judges you might not have in the system, how many judges you need to have, how quickly you should have, what should be the administrative measures that you should take to help the judges. So this is something that you could learn from us.
Yes, that's very important. Yes, this point. I think we can wrap up. Thank you so much.
Just very briefly, sorry, very general question. Did public trust
because we have just
for now, did public trust increase after the vetting process, and do people believe?
As I told you, for the ordinary judicial system, so the ordinary courts, people are unhappy because there are delays. That's the reality. But when you see the SPAC and the special court, the public perception is really high for their like they have very positive impact in the public perception.
So at least in terms of corruption, people have confidence.
But when it comes to the corruption, when it comes to the corruption, I think people are more positive now in favor of the new judges and the new system. Of course, they are unhappy with the delay, and of course, I can't say that 90% of the people that were saying that the system was corrupted, now these 90% of the people are saying the system is not. People still think that, because I don't think that the corruption is 100% out of the system. We still fear that we have corrupted people in the system still. But if you build up a system that can work and clean itself, then this is we are hoping that that will function. That's how it is. We are hoping that the result of the vetting and the impact of it, that we will have to see that in a near future. But things are better, I think. Apart from a bit of stress in the court, overload of the work, and these delays, I think the rest is a bit better than, it's much better than before.
Sorry, do many judges think like you said that you still prefer that the vetting took place? Like your opinion is that it was good despite all the difficulties and everything. Do other judges as well
Who passed, I think, are positive. Who passed, I think, are positive. And of course, apart from that, being stressful and being a bit tired of work and all the rest, but and then of course the new judges in the system, they are happy that they had the chance to enter in. So, but the most important is to see after like 2 or 3 years what the public will think and how we'll see that the system will work. Now it's a bit early for the to have a conclusion, let's say, and a final say.
Thank you so much to everyone. I think we have just passed our all limits, but it was really very interesting. And for us, it's really very important because to have your experience, we also will have the arguments, the evidence to convince the people who are making decisions about conducting vetting, the importance and the negative and positive sides of it. And I think your speeches and presentations and all explanations will help us in the future when we face and hope that it will be very soon that we also return in our like everyday business work because we are still in the stressful situation in Georgia, and we are all far from our professional duties because of the processes and this demonstrations and not very relevant time for reforms of judiciary. But I think that we will have this experience, we'll have this all arguments and documents from you, and this will help us in the future to strengthen our democratic future EU integration, and hope that also you will be our supporters in this process. And thank you again for being today with us for this very important and expressive speeches. And of course, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and best of luck in your professional and in every sphere in 2025, and looking forward for our future collaboration.